Hi guys, it's Monique. I just wanted to get started going over your second chapter, which is Neuroscience and Behavior. For the most part, you guys can go over that on your own. It's pretty self-explanatory. I'm not a sciencey person, but to get through it, you might need to like just take a step back and say, okay. But it's pretty self-explanatory. So, there were a few things that I did want to highlight. So, neurons, just know what they are, right? They're nerve cells. And the different parts of a neuron, which it will go over. But we don't need to get into all in depth. Like I took a neuroscience class one time and it was really in depth. For the sake of our class, we don't really need to get all into that. I do want you guys to know what mirror neurons is or are. Those are the neurons that fire when we see something happening or when we are able to experience what someone else is experiencing, right? So some of the things that people always say mirror neurons are good for are things like empathy and understanding others, right? So when we think about empathy, a lot of people struggle understanding the difference between empathy and sympathy, right? So let's break that down first. Sympathy is kind of like you sympathize with somebody, you can feel bad for them, but you really aren't feeling what they're feeling. Whereas empathy is when you can actually feel someone else's pain. This is when, probably for those people who cry during movies or, you know, things like that, you're able to feel that other person's feelings. Empathy is one of those things that has a very strong innate ties to our brains and biologically the setup there. And the reason is for primitive learning how to survive, right? So I know if your facial expression, if I can read your facial expression, if I can read your feelings, if I can feel your feelings, I know how to navigate situations so that I can survive better, right? And we use this all the time. Even like in nowadays world, we use this all the time. We go on an interview and usually we're able to leave and say, oh, I got the job, or oh my goodness, I blew it, right? So just keep that in mind, mirror neurons. And I'll have you guys watch a clip. I think it's in your post, but it's a brief clip that kind of assesses empathy and how we can kind of change the world from that, right? Neurotransmitters. So those are the chemicals that send the messages. Okay, so in psychology, there's a ton of them, right? But in psychology, you hear the constant theme of a couple of them being said over and over and over again. In our class, I'm gonna mention it too. Dopamine and serotonin. Those are the ones that we wanna not stress, right? We wanna be happy. We wanna experience pleasure. Those are the ones where when we get a hug, we get a release of those type of chemicals. When we do drugs, it mirrors those type of chemicals. So that's why those ones are particularly important. They kind of really relate to like anti-stress, happiness, pleasure, stuff like that. And then also the slides highlight the parts of the brain. You don't need to know those in depth. I mean, they're pretty cool to know. I think they're super cool. Cool little party trick, right? And I uploaded a video that shows you a couple of cool ways to just remember them so that you could be, that person who knows everything, right? And you could just be like, oh, I know about the cerebellum. Oh, what? Corpus callosum, right? So, there you go. I hope this helps you to kind of navigate those slides a little bit easier. If you guys have any questions, you can always reach out to me.